From a notch on the Bible Belt and the ancient Appalachian frontier, otherwise known as the Blue Ridge, welcome to the New Earth, the new consciousness, and this anomalous program called Quantum Conscience, where we sift through the clutter and display the truth the way we deserve it, unfiltered, unabated, and uninhibited. Here we are awarded all the raw data so that we can draw our own conclusions about the truth as we see it individually. Gone is the era which the truth is overlooked. Here to stay is the consciousness. Join me as we pierce the veil, explore another realm, and come back enlightened and ever wiser. I am your trail guide, Spencer Cross, and it is no coincidence you are here with me today. We are synchronistically arriving here, at this point, at this time, and there is much to do. There is much to do and much to cover because we are millennia in the dark as we emerge into the light. So let's get caught up and get back to work as we rediscover the works destroyed in the Library of Alexandria. We find these works in the consciousness and the minds of the guests on this program. The past is in the future, and the future is in the past. So it behooves us to pay attention to what is being discovered and uncovered now. Now, let's get into the news that matters with Tim Bravo.
Greetings, sisters and brothers of planet Earth. I'm Tim Bravo, and this is news that actually matters. Spencer told me that this episode is about personal empowerment. It's going to focus on that, and so I thought I would take a moment to share with you some of my own thoughts on that. Personal empowerment is something that is very important to us as individuals, and it's a very personal thing, personal empowerment. And so we think of it from the standpoint of the individual. What might be helpful for us to realize in this case is that personal empowerment can come through unity. Personal empowerment can come through community, through connection with others, people who think like we do, who we can use as sounding boards, or who can help bolster us when we're down, tell us when they feel we're on the right track, or when we're not. So I wanted to toss that tidbit at everybody. Instead of thinking of personal empowerment solely from the standpoint of the individual, think of your own personal empowerment as being something that can be enhanced and grown via unity and community with others of like mind, connection with others. And to that end, if you don't have an avenue through which to do that, because, if you're listening to this broadcast, you probably feel like you're on the edge of society, and that a lot of people around you don't necessarily share your views and your perception of what's going on in this world around us. So, lucky for us, we have the internet, and I would suggest that you guys get hooked up with the Thrive movement. It's been a good thing for me. It's a very positive and very enlightening and very informative movement, not just the movie, but the movement as a whole, and staying up to date with Thrive and being subscribed to their newsletter and getting good news on a regular basis. It's been a good thing, and there are ways to connect with others of like mind through the Thrive movement that I think would work to personally empower you. So you might check that out. In any situation, if you want to feel personally empowered, whether it is by yourself or with others, direct action is one way to feel more empowered, because doing something is better than doing nothing, and it certainly feels better than doing nothing. And it doesn't have to necessarily be groundbreaking. If it's just you standing on the street corner shaking a sheep, holding a sign that has something on it that might cause one other person to think or to look into something, whether it's chemtrails or GMOs or whatever it is, doing something is going to empower you. It's going to make you feel more empowered. It's going to make you feel elated that you're doing something. I know from the personal experience, anytime I do any sort of direct action, I feel good. I feel empowered. I feel flush with energy. And in those situations where there are others with me, it is amplified all the more. So that's my little take on personal empowerment for this episode. And thanks to Spencer for focusing on this. It's something that I think can help people and help push the ball down the field and get us toward that world we all know we can make a reality. So in the news, let's talk about net neutrality. I'm going to read you a quote. Here's the quote. I will take a backseat to no one in my commitment to network neutrality, because once providers start to privilege some applications or websites over others, then the smaller voices get squeezed out and we all lose. The internet is perhaps the most open network in history, and we have to keep it that way. That quote is from Barack Hussein Obama. That's right, the liar in chief. This is from the source of PolitiFact.com's 2013 Lie of the Year over healthcare. Remember when Barack Obama said, if you like your insurance, you can keep it? And it turned out that just wasn't the case. Now, that was the lie of the year last year, and I guess he's working on new ones. Another lie that Obama sold you is that he wouldn't, if you elected him, which you did, he wouldn't allow any lobbyists in his administration. Lie. Enter, among other lobbyists, Tom Wheeler. Tom Wheeler has been a lobbyist for decades for the cable and internet lobby, for the industry, for the cable industry, and then obviously that grew into the internet because they're a large internet provider. This is a guy who lobbied for years and years and years for deregulation, for government deregulation of cable industry and internet. And this is the guy, the lobbyist who Obama has placed at the head of the FCC, the organization that the White House has since allowed to rewrite net neutrality rules. Remember net neutrality that Obama said was so important we have to keep it neutral? And then he puts an industry lobbyist at the head of the government organization regulating the industry. Let's also remember that Mr. Tom Wheeler raised $700,000 for Obama's election. So I don't think that we should trust Barack Obama. I don't think that we should trust Tom Wheeler. And I think that we should all keep our eye on this particular situation, be very aware of this, because net neutrality is very, very important. An open internet is very, very important. Believe me, the corporations that run this planet would love to get an edge over smaller voices and get little deals over smaller voices, because not only will it translate into more money for them and less money for smaller competitors and squeeze out those competitors, but it will also make sure that those small voices on the internet that are dispersing information, important information that you can't get from mainstream media, like this show and others like it, that those voices get squeezed out, just like Barack Obama said. And that is why it's very important. The internet is what has created enormous resources for us as individual citizens of this planet to unite with one another, to share information with one another. We have to keep it neutral. And so, even though Barack Obama says he's going to, remember, he also said that you could keep your insurance. He also said that no lobbyist would be a part of his administration. And he said that he's going to keep the net neutral. If you choose to believe him, I think that's on you. And this is an American problem. Luckily, the rest of the planet can choose to go around America and is making moves to go around America where the internet is concerned. In fact, Brazil has just put out, their Congress has put out an internet constitution that codifies a neutral internet. So net neutrality will be a reality in Brazil. At least it's put into law there. Last time I was with you guys, we talked about Michael C. Rupert, and his suicide. Now, this is a guy who used to be in the LAPD, who basically told the world that the CIA was trafficking drugs and ended up having to go on the run, and over the years has become quite the investigative journalist and done a real service to humanity, and apparently killed himself recently. However, the senior editor of veteranstoday.com, Gordon Duff, of which Michael Rupert was actually a contributor, Gordon Duff says that Rupert called him recently and said that if he ever heard that he'd committed suicide, it would not be true. So there's an update for you guys. Rupert probably didn't kill himself. In fact, I'm going to go out and say that like I told you, I would never kill himself. He told Gordon Duff he would never kill himself. And if he heard anything to that effect, it would be a lie. So the question now is, was Michael Rupert killed, or did he fake his death to disappear? Either way, he did not commit suicide. Let's get back to MH370. Nothing going on there in the mainstream media. It's sort of filtered out. I was at the bank the other day, and CNN was talking about conspiracy theories and debunking them. But that's as much Flight 370 information as you're going to get from the mainstream media these days. There's a story that came out in an independent internet website that is getting zero traction in the mainstream media, and that's that a company called Georesonance, I believe they're out of Australia, claims they found the wreckage, that they used several techniques and even a nuclear reactor. I'm not sure how that exactly works, but using satellite data and other techniques, they say they've located the wreckage of Flight 370 5,000 kilometers away from the search area. So it's like way off from where everybody's looking for this thing. It's the only story I found on this. It's not being picked up by mainstream media, but it actually sounds like it might be legitimate. So the question at this point is, really? Did they really find it? If so, how did it get there? How does this play into the Flight 370 story overall? Did they not really find it? If they did, the question becomes, why is mainstream media ignoring this story? Why aren't they shouting it from the rooftops? This would be a big deal, considering all the resources and time that people have put into 370. So at this point, we can only speculate, but I wanted to make you guys aware that this company, Georesonance, has said they found the wreckage, and it's way far afield from where everybody's looking for it. So that's it for today. That's our news that actually matters. Come back next time. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of world events in the next couple of weeks. Juicy stuff for us to talk about. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Enjoy the rest of the broadcast. Check me out at facebook.com/Bravo New World Blogcast and interact with me on Twitter at Tim Bravo. Until next time, keep your eyes to the sky and your ear to the ground. Peace.
Thank you, Tim, for giving us the news that actually matters. This is obviously not stuff that you'll find on your nightly news or on cable news, but these are things that you will find here that actually help you wake up. And as Tim likes to say, shake a sheep. It's time to shake the sheep. Not just one, all of them. And hopefully we're able to reach quite a bit here while we're doing this show. And after hearing that newscast, it makes you wonder, golly, with all this stuff that's going on, all of these strange coincidences and synchronicities and negative news, what seems to be negative, it makes you wonder, well, what is it that I can do? What can I do? And what power do I have? Is there anything that I can do? Well, today you're going to learn about a substance that is near and dear to my heart. I wrote a book called The Great Pyramid, A Factory for Monoatomic Gold in November of last year. And what you're going to hear today is the story of one of the sources that I use, that I cited in my book, who has been championing this substance and helping people realize that not only is this something that we can use to help increase our yield with agriculture, but we can also become better people while taking this and consuming this and using this. So with that, we'll move right into talking with Barry Carter. Barry Carter has dedicated a quarter of a century to the research of an amazing and extremely unique substance. Have you ever wondered why we have not been able to prove to traditional scientists that spirit exists and that it is the foundation of our physical reality? Many scientists are interested in proving a connection between spirit and body, but their findings are indirect and inconclusive. Wouldn't it be great if there was a substance with the properties holding that of both spirit and matter, which served as an intermediary between the two? The ancients spoke of such substances. They spoke of chi, Soma, Manna, alchemical white gold, mufkat, which is an ancient Egyptian word spelled MFKZT, the fountain of youth, Shem-an-na, Prana, and the Philosopher's stone. Modern historians dismiss these references as being related to psychedelic plants, but quite often the ancients were very specific in stating that these substances were related to precious metals like gold and silver. The Hindu alchemists made an ayurvedic white powder form of mercury, and in the book of Exodus, Moses took the golden calf, which the Israelites made for worship, and, quote, burnt it up in the fire, and ground it to a powder, and strawed it upon the water, and made the children of Israel drink it, end quote. Egyptian priests made mufkat, which was described as a conical white bread made from gold, and was both eaten and offered to the gods. Chi and prana are described as energetic substances which can be accumulated in the body through certain breathing techniques. The Philosopher's stone is said to be an evolved form of the precious metals gold and silver. Soma and the fountain of youth would be liquids which confer youth and vitality when one drinks them. Barry Carter, this week's guest on Quantum Conscience, reports that there are substances which fit criteria for an uncharted state of matter, and these substances look like they may be an intermediate stage between spirit and matter. We call these materials the Ormis, or monoatomic state elements. They were first brought to the attention of modern science by a man named David Hudson, an Arizona cotton farmer, through a series of lectures in the 1990s. Carter is a leading authority in the substance called Ormis, also known as white powder gold. Barry has been working with Ormis elements since 1989. He travels around the world giving presentations on the historic context, biological implications, increasing scientific documentation, and practical engineering applications of these extraordinary substances. In Carter's lectures, he typically gives an overview of ancient alchemical references to the Ormis substances and their effects. Then he explains how these substances might work to generate unusual effects. Carter moderates dozens of local and worldwide internet forums on this subject of Ormis. Carter has always been interested in science and spirituality. He was a woodworker for much of his adult life, and the tool skills he learned helped him design what he calls magnetic traps and other Ormis extraction methods. His previous career was largely concerned with improving computer communication for forest activists in sparsely populated eastern Oregon. He was also an electronic librarian for the bulletin board system and website. Carter collected scientific and legal documents of value to the forest activists. He's become quite concerned that humanity is destroying the environment faster than it can repair itself. He feels that there are several ways that the Ormis materials can actually help to reverse this trend. Wow. Join me in welcoming Barry Carter to Quantum Conscience. Hi, Barry. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Spencer. Thank you very much.
So, Barry, let's delve right into it. What in the world is Ormis?
It's a bunch of elements. Many of them are precious metals in their metallic form, but in this other form of matter, they don't assay as metals. They show up as other elements, possibly, sometimes iron, silica, or aluminum, sometimes calcium. Depends on how the assay is done and what kind of a chemical container they're in. And we think that they're present in the air, in the water, in all water, and in the ground and in all of our food. But typically we do things because we don't know what they are and we don't know enough about them. We typically do things that deplete them from the soil and from our food. So when we replace them in our plants grow better. Have you seen my giant nuts?
I personally have not. I'm assuming you have some pictures of these?
Yes, on my website, subtleenergies.com, there are pictures of my walnuts that are the size of tennis balls.
You're kidding me.
They're huge.
That is amazing.
And they were grown, I'd guess about 50 to 60 feet away from other walnut trees that didn't get the seawater Ormis concentrate. And the ones that got the Ormis concentrate were the size of a tennis ball. The other ones were the size of a quarter.
That is unbelievable. So, well, I guess we can get into the details of how you did that later, but was it a significant amount of Ormis that you applied to the tree? Or
I didn't apply the Ormis to the tree. The guy who did applied about a cup of the seawater Ormis concentrate twice a year.
That's really not a lot, is it?
Not much at all.
So you're saying that these are things that occur, naturally or would have occurred naturally in our food, and you believe that it's kind of dissipated over time or been extracted over time. Do you mean that it used to be in our soil, or our plants used to make it themselves?
It takes something like 1,000 years to grow an inch of topsoil. And whenever we ship food off of site from where it's grown, and we don't put our waste back onto that place, we're basically flushing these minerals into the ocean.
So we're literally extracting them out of the soil and not giving them back in any way.
Exactly.
Wow.
And that seems to be a very major problem in the context of these nutrients that nobody knows about, because since nobody really knows much about them, nobody knows how to preserve them or replace them.
So I guess if we had a sustainable, food supply that would recycle within the same region of the country, maybe a tri-state or a smaller area, then we probably would be replenishing a lot of these minerals back into the soil. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. But we have some rules in agriculture. One of them is don't poop where you eat. Well, that's wrong. You know, we need to replace the nutrients into the soil that we've extracted. And we just flat don't do it. So getting them from ocean water, or you can also concentrate them from the air or from other sources like fresh water. There's a gentleman in Idaho that makes a plant product that is trap water. Basically, you use a magnetic trap. These Ormis elements have quantum properties at biological temperatures, at room temperature. They appear to levitate on magnetic fields. So in water, where Ormis probably is maybe 1/8 of the total weight of all water, they're quite concentrated in the water, and you can concentrate them further by spinning them in a magnetic field, and they will go away from the magnetic field.
Now, are you saying that this is coming from your tap, or where is this water coming from that you're describing?
This gentleman is getting water from a spring on his property in eastern Idaho.
Huh.
His product is called Garden Shot. It's not something that you can eat because he's mixed in worm castings and fish poop into it. But when it's put on plants, the results seem to be very similar to the results from the seawater precipitate that you may make by raising the pH of seawater up to 10.78 and taking the resulting precipitate and using that on the plants.
Okay, so I have a million questions now that we're only just a couple minutes into this, but some of it we'll have to get back to, but let's backtrack a little bit, and can you please tell me why you got interested in this and when?
My friend, a friend named Jim, was working with some mine waste material, using ozone to clean the mine waste material, and he got some of this ozonated mine waste material in his hands and on his hands, and it somehow got into his hands.
Ooh.
We can't figure out how it got into his hands, but when he opened his hands, fibers of gold came out the backs of his hands.
What do you mean?
Literally, it somehow condensed and came out of his hands as metal fibers, maybe along the nerves or along the muscle fibers or something.
Like it was coming out like hair, or?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and some of them were like almost an inch long. I only saw them about a 1/4 inch long, but that really made me wonder what was going on here.
Yeah, that's very strange.
And so I was really interested. I told this story to a lot of people, and one of the friends I told it to heard about David Hudson, who, as you mentioned earlier, is one of the first discoverers of this stuff, and he talked about similar properties of this stuff that I think Jim had coming out the backs of his hands. And so it turns out that my friend Richard had heard about a workshop in Portland, Oregon that David Hudson was going to have, and so I went to the workshop and took my friend Jim, and we listened to David Hudson, and it was just absolutely total correlation to what Jim had experienced. And have you ever seen those bobblehead dolls in the back window of a car?
Yeah.
Well, that's what Jim looked like as he was listening to this stuff.
So everything that Hudson was describing, Jim was just...
Totally made sense to him.
Huh. So it had something to do with the mining then.
It had to do with the water, the ozonated mine waste water. And Jim found that you can use ozone to convert metal into its Ormis state.
Wow.
And I figured out that you can also use hydrogen peroxide, which is another high oxygen thing, to convert hydrogen peroxide mixed with hydrochloric acid. You can make metal. And the way you can prove that you've got Ormis, the way you can prove that it exists, is you make an unassayable product from pure metal using hydrogen peroxide and hydrochloric acid.
So for the people who are not scientifically, as scientifically literate as some of the listeners, what would assay? Why would you want to assay your substance?
You want to identify what it is.
Okay.
And the word manna means what is it?
Right.
And this is a problem with all Ormis products and all Ormis, or maybe a solution, I don't know, because they don't assay using conventional spectroscopic assay methods. In fact, you have to convert them to metal before they even show up in an assay. Now, an assay is basically a way of detecting the elemental components of a given bit of ore or anything, food or water or whatever. You can run an assay on just about anything, and it's important to assay many things because in the metallic form, many of these elements are toxic. In the Ormis form, they do not seem to be toxic at all.
For example, which metals would you say would not be toxic in the Ormis form?
Well, the most common elements in the Ormis form are rhodium, iridium, and gold, in that order. At least in seawater, and seawater is kind of a mixing pot of all the water that's ever eroded in the rocks from the mountains. It all eventually ends up in the sea. So my guess is that that rhodium is the most common element. Rhodium, Ormis rhodium, is very beneficial. Metallic rhodium is quite toxic.
Okay. So what is happening to this rhodium to make it not toxic?
It's toxic because it's reactive. Rhodium is used as a catalyst in catalytic converters and other devices. It helps to get rid of toxic elements in your exhaust, for example, in your car, and catalytic converters are used for that. In the Ormis form, it is not reactive. We think that the Ormis form is basically a box. What we see when we have... There's a hypothesis that the Ormis is monatomic.
Right.
I doubt that that's true, because a monatom, a single atom, would not be visible. And a single atom of gold with an uneven number of electrons would still have electrons available for valence bonding. It'd still be able to bond with other things and and making that connection, it would be able then to be reactive. We think that what's going on with the Ormis elements is they're hidden inside of a chemical enclosure, a molecular enclosure, that what we see when we see a white powder of gold isn't the gold itself, it's the box that it's in, the chemical container that it's in.
Oh.
And that chemical container may be sodium chloride, it may be magnesium hydroxide, it can be a lot of other different things, but we're not seeing the box. And because when we assay the white powder, let's say we assay some white powder of gold made using the peroxide method, and I have 4 assays of white powder of gold made using the peroxide method. It shows up as having somewhere in the neighborhood of 28 parts per billion gold.
Huh.
That's way less than 1%.
What do you think you would have started
parts
with?
Per billion. Started out with pure gold metal, hydrogen peroxide, and hydrochloric acid.
No, I mean, like, if you had to guess your parts per billion or parts per million when you got started, what do you think?
Well, it should assay as 90 or 100%
Okay, I gotcha.
gold.
That's crazy. That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So it just basically
so-
disappears, and then all we get to see is the container it's in.
Exactly. Yes.
Huh.
Now, what I think is the basis of the disappearance, and this relates to the topic of your program. I think that it's like it has 3 legs, and ordinary metal has all 3 legs in this world, in this physical realm. Ormis has 2 legs here and 1 leg somewhere else.
Wow.
In a non-physical realm. And because of that, I suspect, this is just a hypothesis, it isn't a proven theory, I suspect that it operates as a connector to the non-physical. Now, people call the non-physical many different things, and I'm not going to get into a discussion about, which of those things is the real name for the non-physical. Let's just call it the non-physical.
Okay. I mean, you can call it whatever you want to here. I know it has many names, and I would say that the listeners of this program would understand
right.
these many names, and they would probably consider the same thing to have these many names. So, but non-physical is fine. That's fine. You can continue.
Yeah. And what we think is that it's okay. Everybody, many people, not everybody, but many people that will be listening to your program are connected to the internet. Is your program broadcast on the internet?
Yes, it should start out as YouTube and then later archived as well.
Okay, and if you try to connect with, do you remember when there used to be dial-up internet connections and no high-speed internet?
Yes, in fact, where I live, that's the primary way people connect. I mean, I guess it would be now not dial-up specifically, but kind of like a hybrid between, I forgot the term for it, but it would be a hybrid between cable and dial-up, I guess.
Right. Now, we couldn't be having a very good conversation if you were on dial-up.
True. Yeah, that's
because the information transfer rate wouldn't be adequate to really carry voice over that that connection. What we think Ormis does is it improves our connection. It is, in fact, the modem that connects us to the inner net. I'm not saying internet, I'm saying inner net.
Okay.
This non-physical source of information and consciousness and connection. And when we improve the connection, therefore, it's like going from dial-up to high-speed internet. Now, that doesn't determine what you're going to do on the internet. You can go on the internet and look at yucky stuff or look at wonderful stuff. Faster connection just gives you a faster feedback on what you're looking at.
Gotcha. So if anyone out there is thinking that they can just take Ormis and become an enlightened human being, then they're gravely mistaken.
Exactly.
So it's just a tool. It's a hammer.
Yeah. It's like you're standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon and you shout, "I love you!" And a minute later somebody says, "I love you," and you think, "Oh, somebody out there loves me." Or you say, "I hate you." And a minute later you get scared because somebody out there hates you. It's because of the delay in the echo of what you say. Well, the Ormis seems to shorten that delay so that it overlaps. "I love you, I love you. I hate you, I hate you." And that overlap says, "Oh, I said that. I did that." And when you say, "I did that, I said that," it doesn't really matter whether it was yucky or wonderful. That feedback helps you to realize that you are responsible for what happened.
Interesting. Okay. So then that starts to make me think, all these people are talking about, we're in an age of faster manifestation or instant manifestation or better manifestation. Then you're kind of describing that, if you're thinking that Ormis is going to be the manifestation, that's where you're drawing your mistake. It's going to be more like it will give you good feedback or instant feedback or stronger feedback to let you know if this is what you really want, or is this the track that you intend to be on.
Exactly. And it would be nice if we had a Manna, this is called Manna, festival, station. That way we could broadcast this kind of information to everybody all the time.
Yes. Well, that is, part of the intent of this program, and that's why you're, very high on the list of the guests, is because I quickly discovered that Ormis is important, and it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of discussion about it. There's not enough discussion, mainly due to the mainstream media, that they don't want to focus on anything like this, and it is kind of out there and esoteric, and it would be self-admitted, based on my own experience, because I've tried to make it myself, and I've been taking it myself. It is a very unusual substance that creates unusual feelings, and it really does lend its name. It goes back to its name. What then is it? With the Mufkusti, what then is it?
Yeah.
So the question is do we, this is a question I wanted to ask later, but I can go ahead and ask it now, but do we have as good of an understanding of this type of substance as they might have had in the ancient past?
There's a book called Sacred Science by Schwaller de Lubicz. And in that book, he postulates that the ancients had a different kind of science that we have now. than what we have now. And their science was more intuition-based. And it was nevertheless very effective. And they were able to build some very powerful technological devices like the pyramid, and there are pyramids around the world, and these pyramids do seem to concentrate the energies that enhance the effectiveness of the Ormis elements.
Okay.
So those sacred sciences were things that the ancients knew about and were probably better at than we are. We're just applying modern common sciences to it and learning how it relates to some of these ancient sacred sciences.
Okay. Well, I mean, can you speculate? Do you think you have an idea of where this gap of understanding is? What do you think, or can you speculate what you think that they did know that we are yet to understand?
Apparently Moses, when he burned the golden calf and strewed it upon the water and made the children of Israel eat of it, that was something that he knew something about. I've actually burned gold and converted it into a white powder that is edible.
Now, did you actually use flames for that, or did you use the chemical reaction method?
I used flames and sodium metal, but one can also use sodium hydroxide. One can probably use potassium hydroxide, which you can get from wood ash. So the technology probably was there. I suspect that the ancients intuited the technology, although they may have done a lot of experimentation as well.
So, if they were, I mean, you're saying that they were making it at least. They understood how to make it then, based on the ancient texts like the Bible. And we see some evidence in some Egyptian temples as well. So that we can try to correlate or make a comparison to what you guys are doing today with this versus what they were doing in the past, so that maybe we can bridge the language barrier or something. Can you kind of walk us through a general description of how you would make Ormis?
Well, mostly we don't make it, we concentrate it.
Okay.
There are many different ways to concentrate it. We've found that it's in raw sea salt and raw sea water, unpurified sea water. The way we found this was there was a gentleman, we call him the Essene, because he claims that he was an Essene back in the time of King Solomon. And he worked on the Dead Sea, making, according to his memories, making gold for King Solomon.
Wow.
He was making gold from the white precipitate that he got from Dead Sea water or Dead Sea salt near the water. And we've found that when we take Dead Sea salt and raise the pH to 10.78 using sodium hydroxide, also known as lye or caustic soda, when we do that, we get a white precipitate that apparently has quite a bit of gold in it. And in fact, One of the Ormis providers, a guy named Don Nance, has used the method that the guy we call the Essene describes to convert this to metal. He says it takes a long time, about a year, to get most of the conversion to happen. But he's got 181 million times as much silver out of the original Dead Sea precipitate as was originally detected in there by his first assays.
Good Lord. That's amazing.
It is. But 181 million times still isn't very much, because silver was less than 0.05 parts per billion to start with.
Yeah, but essentially you're making something out of nothing in that instance still.
Exactly.
Huh. Was he able to do the same thing with gold?
He didn't get as much gold, but he got, I think it was 800,000 or something like that.
Okay, well, you're still making something out of nothing with that. That's amazing, too.
Absolutely, yes.
So if you did it on a large enough scale, you're onto something.
Well, yes, and according to the fellow we called the Essene, he was making gold for King Solomon.
From the Dead Sea.
From the Dead Sea, and that's where King Solomon's gold came from. And King Solomon's gold is fairly legendary. I don't know if the process that he described is the whole process. There may be some other things, but he did say, and David Hudson has also said, that nobody's been able to do it in less than a year, 9 months or to a year. That it just takes a long time to do the conversion. So, and this is something that I'm not encouraging people to do. It's just a way to confirm that these things that we claim we have really are what we claim they are.
Yeah, that they're there.
Yeah. 2 ways to do it. Convert metal to Ormis. Convert Ormis to metal. Those are the ways to give evidence that it's really there. And it's a lot easier to convert Ormis to metal to Ormis than it is to convert Ormis to metal.
Ah, okay. We'll obviously have to discuss. Okay. So then, just kind of like maybe in as general or as short a process as you can, how do you make the Ormis? And, of course if you want to leave some steps out just for safety, I can respect that. But how would you make the Ormis, and then how would you turn the precipitate into gold or other noble metals?
Well, one way to do it, apparently, that seems to work pretty well, to convert Ormis to metal, and a lot of these are toxic metal, is use a cell phone or Wi-Fi. Cell phones don't hone the self, and Wi-Fi won't make your wife high. It just makes her confused. And we think it makes her confused because it's converting the Ormis in the brain, moving it toward metal. Now, the full conversion maybe takes 10 years or more. That's probably why the Wi-Fi and the cell phones don't cause cancer, or the cancer rate goes up after 10 years with users of these devices.
So that establishes a method to turn Ormis into metal.
Uh-huh.
But how do you turn, let's say, for example, Dead Sea salt or Dead Sea salt water into Ormis first?
You're concentrating the Ormis. You're not converting it.
I'm sorry, I using the wrong vocabulary. I apologize.
You raise the pH to 10.78 and no higher using sodium hydroxide, also known as lye or caustic soda.
Okay.
And you put it in real slowly. Add the lye to the Dead Sea salt mixed with water, or just the Dead Sea water, or ordinary seawater or ordinary sea salt. Now that's a little bit more complicated. Well, it's actually a lot more complicated than a much simpler way to do it that I noticed. You can take sea salt. This is whole sea salt, like Celtic sea salt. You can get it at natural food stores, and Dead Sea salt you can also get in the bath salts section of natural food stores. You take the Celtic sea salt. I like it because it has an oily feel to it already.
Okay.
And you take a container and fill it about half full of the Celtic sea salt, and fill it all the way to the top with, I like grapeseed oil because it absorbs into the skin well. And you add the grapeseed oil and shake it. Half Dead Sea or half Celtic sea salt, half grapeseed oil. Shake it, let it sit for a few days, and then use the oil off the top.
Huh. So the oil can dissolve this out of the salt?
It moves from the salt into the oil.
Interesting.
We think. Now this oil, when it's moved without shielding, when you drive it around without shielding, one Ormis producer, a lady called Sharon Rose, she makes essential oils and mixes essential oils with this stuff. She calls it live oil. When she travels around with it, this stuff gets out of sealed containers.
What? What do you mean? Like goes through the lid, or how does it get out?
We don't know. It gets out and will be covering the outside of the sealed container. Some essential oils do this as well. And she's taken a whole group of oils on a 300-mile round trip and documented which oils get out and which don't. And the live oil that I just described seems to get out better than any of the others, but like frankincense seems to get out as well. We presume that that's because frankincense has lots of the Ormis elements in it.
So are you thinking it's going through the glass, or breaking the seal, or going through the plastic lid, or what do you think is going on here?
We've seen it do quantum tunneling. We think that that's what's happening.
Okay, so explain quantum tunneling.
We've seen it get out of sealed containers. It literally goes somewhere else and comes back on the other side.
Just literally passing through the container.
Or teleporting out. We don't know for sure.
That is odd. That is extremely odd.
This may be why it prefers to be inside molecular cages, molecular boxes, because they give it some shielding.
Okay. That is wacky. That is so wacky.
Absolutely.
So what do you think is the most significant application for this relatively undiscovered substance?
Oh, I like to use topical application for the oil.
Okay.
And it seems to, as you mentioned, I've done a lot of woodworking and other things, and in the process of doing all of those things, I use solvents and stuff like that, and get my hands in them, and it causes my hand. It takes the oils out of my hands, and my fingers split around the nails, and I have problems like that. Well, I put this oil on my hands, and all of those problems go away like in a day.
Wow.
And people tell me I have the skin. I'm 64 and a half, 64 and 3/4 years old, and people tell me I have the skin of a 30-year-old. I sure hope I don't have to give it back.
So, when you go on the internet, you research this stuff, and even if you go to your own forum and join that, what you'll notice is that people are mostly discussing consuming it. What would you say? I mean, I'm assuming that you've tried both.
The oil is consumable.
Okay.
You can also make a very simple trap. So you can basically cause one of the quantum properties of some, maybe all of the Ormis elements is that they levitate when they're spun over a magnetic field. They move upward. This may be why they appear to be more common on the surface of the ocean than under the ocean. Than 300 meters down or something.
Huh.
And
so they're trying to get away from the Earth's magnetic field?
Yeah.
Okay. And so the top of the water is the surface of the water as far as they can get, or you think they go up there and then continue to evaporate out?
David Hudson remarked that if you evaporate water and thinking you're getting pure water, distilled water, you're not.
Mm-hmm.
These elements are still in it.
Whether they're toxic or non-toxic, it doesn't matter, they're still in it?
They are not toxic.
Okay, so you're saying only the non-toxic will evaporate out.
Right.
Okay.
The Ormis elements appear to be non-toxic. Of course, water is a toxic material.
Explain.
Air is a toxic substance. Hyperventilate.
True.
You will have toxic effects. It's okay to drink a gallon of water a day, but 6 gallons of water a day will kill you.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
So everything has a toxic level and a non-toxic level. Sick talk is toxic.
Well, I mean, everything in moderation, as they say.
Yes.
But then the issue is since this is in its infancy, then how do we know, or do we know? Have you guys researched what the appropriate dosage is in its various forms?
Well, we keep it low. We suggest that people use a relatively low dose. I mentioned magnetic traps. You can trap this stuff out of ordinary fresh water. Take a tin can, put a magnet on the bottom of it, put water in it, stir the water. The Ormis will concentrate as far away from the metal of the can as it can. And so you take an eyedropper after it's been sitting for an hour or so, an eyedropper, and take an eyedropper full out of the center at the top. This is concentrated Ormis from the water. Different water sources will give you different elements in different ratios, but well water and underground water seems to work best, water that hasn't already been exposed to the air. Because it seems to go into the air after it's been running down the stream for a while.
Okay.
You've heard of prana?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Pranayama is a way of extracting prana from the air. It's a form of I guess you could say hyperventilation, but it's not really. You're basically removing the prana from the air by breathing. We think that that's what it is you're concentrating the ormis from the air. One gentleman has taken dew collected at the time of the full moon in the morning and converted it into a white powder that will levitate.
Okay, so he's collecting it out of the air, just like you described with the prana, and yes. Concentrating it.
Yes.
Huh. So, okay, we're going to need to take a break here in a second, but on the other side of the break, you were describing what was happening with your walnut trees and increasing the seed size and the walnut size. What I'm wondering is what is it doing to us? As we're taking it, you're feeding it to the tree, you're feeding it to the human. How does it affect the human? What does it do to us? So, all right, let's stop here. We'll take a 5-minute break. I'm going to run to the loo, and some people in this neck of the woods would say outhouse. And we'll click right here, right where we left off. Back in a bit to Quantum Conscience. This is Spencer Cross.
Welcome back to Quantum Conscience. I am here with Barry Carter, expert on Ormis and white powder gold. Barry, before the break, we were talking about the correlation between what Ormis is doing to plants, as you described the walnut tree and how it created walnuts that were huge compared to the other trees that were over 50 feet away. But what do we know about what it is doing to humans as we consume it?
Well, I suspect that it's doing the same thing for plants, animals, and people. That thing that I suspect that it's doing, and this is just a hypothesis, but it's supported by some empirical evidence, I suspect that it's improving intercellular communication. And improving intercellular communication in plants results in healthier, more abundant plant production.
Right.
Improving it in the soil results in deeper and richer soil. Improving it in animals results in healthier animals. Some of the Ormis providers have actually done experiments on animals, or had people that they provide to do experiments on it. And one provider, C-Crop, SEA-CROP.com, did some experiments in Holland on 250,000 chickens. They were fed a very small amount of Ormis, and they grew bigger and faster than the chickens without the C-Crop in their
wow,
mixed in their water. And this wasn't particularly good for them because they were ready for slaughter a week earlier than if they hadn't had it.
Mm. This doesn't bode well for the vegetarians out there.
Well, I don't know that any of the vegetarians would be contemplating getting slaughtered anyway.
But I mean, in that example, we're obviously talking about, raising chickens for feed, but,
right.
So, I guess, is this like a 6-week, process? Like normally how old would the chickens normally be ready for slaughter versus in this case, the Ormis chicken?
I think it was 7 ordinarily and 6 in this particular instance.
Okay. Well, you'd obviously see some interest in industry, in the chicken raising industry, obviously.
Yes.
Because that, 1 week is a big deal in production.
Well, 1 week, 1 week out of 6, or 1 week out of 7 is a major portion of the lifespan.
Do you think that they're secretly doing this, or do you think it's just not enough of them know about it?
I think not enough people know about it.
Okay. What do you think needs to be firmly established about Ormis before mainstream science will begin to champion this?
I think we have to get the interest of famous people.
Okay.
Because famous people have the attention of lots of other people.
You mean famous scientists or actors or both?
Actors, actresses, people that have the attention of a lot of other people.
Well, I mean, if you look on the internet, you'll find that a lot of people claim that, and just like you said when you're applying it to your skin, that you seem to be, eternally youthful. So
it has a youthing effect on the skin.
So you would think that actors and actresses would love this stuff.
Well, they call it anti-aging. But I like Asians, so I don't call it that. I call it youthing.
Okay.
And you would think that they would like it, but so far it hasn't really taken off yet. The oil method, the live oil method that I described, where you mix oil with sea salt, seems to have a lot of youthing benefits. But it hasn't been tested enough to really know that it works for everybody in every circumstance.
Okay.
There's also, we build structures to serve us. We build houses and we try to make them as rigid and unchanging as possible. You don't want the roof to blow off. You don't want potholes in your streets. So we build structures that resist change. We do the same thing with corporations and governments and religions and Bibles. All of these structures that we built are built to resist change. But I don't know if you've noticed this, shift happens.
Seems like we're going through one right now.
And if it doesn't happen, something else happens that sounds sort of the same.
So can we make this on a large scale industrially?
There are many people that are doing that. But there are also interests, and I won't name names, that would prefer that their structures not be threatened.
What do you mean?
You can think of corporations that might not want a youthing effect, that are already providing products that appear to reduce wrinkles and things like that. You can think of corporations that might not want a way to use cheap and simple organic methods to grow more plants and healthier plants and plants that are more resistant to insects and so on.
Well, I mean, since you brought that up, I'm not afraid to name names, but I would say that Monsanto comes to mind when you're talking about Roundup and using Roundup-ready plants.
I try not to use the M word.
Well, you don't have to. You can read that to me. But would you say that would be a good example of a corporate interest that would be not wanting to see this?
As they say in surgery, suture yourself.
Well, that's unfortunate because, when you're looking at the idea of manipulating genetics in order to not only quote unquote feed the world in a sustainable manner, since we are, going over the 7 billion mark on this planet. You'd think that you'd want to pursue something like this. If you want to supercharge the soil, you want to supercharge your plants so that you can produce fruits and seeds and edible produce to feed large numbers of people. That is, of course, if you want there to be large numbers of people on this planet.
Right.
So, I would imagine that if you can make this on a large scale, there would be some maybe smaller players in the field that would be interested in seeing this succeed.
There are definitely people that are making it and selling it. I mentioned sea crop. There's also garden shot that's being made from river water, trap water that's having similar results to the sea crop in terms of increasing production. I've used both on my house plants. Do you have any house plants?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to. Actually, I started my garden a little bit early this year indoors, and I'm going to take it outdoors in a few weeks, hopefully, if we can get above freezing at night.
How often do you water your plants?
Every day.
I water mine every 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay. How is that possible?
I think that the Ormis, because it's it has more of the nutrients that the plants need. These Ormis minerals are very essential for plant health. Plants, in order to get all the minerals they need, they have to suck them out of the water, suck them in through water.
Okay.
In order to get enough minerals, they have to keep sucking water out of the ground and transpiring it into the air until they get all the minerals they need. If they're not getting the minerals they need, they keep just wasting water.
Interesting theory. Interesting.
Now, people aren't that way, but we're kind of that way. If we don't get the nutrients we need, we're still hungry. And when we're hungry, we keep eating.
True. High caloric intake, low nutrient equals more food.
And plants don't get fat, but they do waste water.
So you think that the reason that the plants are drinking so much water is mainly or even solely because they are trying to extract minerals out of the water?
Yes.
Wow.
Nutrients, yes.
And if there's a way we could prove that for mainstream science, that would be huge.
Well, good evidence is the fact that I water my plants every 4 to 6 weeks, and you water yours every day.
So you're kind of quietly sitting back using Ormis in any way that you can possibly think of. while the rest of us are kind of twiddling our thumbs trying to learn about it.
Yes.
Are there more people like you out there?
There are many people that are experimenting with it. We have a bunch of Ormis forums where people share their experiences. There's one on Facebook, and there's also a bunch of them on Yahoo groups. And you can contact me on my website. My email address is sumro, S-U-M-R-O, which is Ormis spelled backwards, sumro@zz.com, zz.com.
Okay. If you could send me a couple of links, I'll actually post them in the description underneath this video after I post it.
Absolutely, yes.
Please do. So there are some people out there, and so then that kind of brings me to the question of, like, who are some of the big players? I know I've heard you mention David Hudson, but these days, what's going on a large scale research-wise and trying to get the word out? You know, you have the forums, but it just seems like people enjoy watching videos and meeting other people at conventions and stuff like that. Where can we kind of rub elbows with some other Ormis enthusiasts?
You can check out YouTube and find a lot of videos from the 2011 Enota, E-N-O-T-A. Google Ormis and Enota, and you'll find some videos on there. Like I said, Facebook is another place to get a lot of information about what's going on. And joining the Ormis forums on Yahoo groups, and there's also a White Gold forum on my website, subtleenergies.com/Ormis/TW as in the work, /TW/forums.htm. You can find a bunch of forums linked, and I've got about 80 forums that I run. Most of them are local, some for an entire country, some for specific areas around cities in different countries. The most of them are in the United States. Some of them, there's 3 or 4 in Australia, and several in Europe. So you can join local and global forums on that web page.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Now, you asked about consciousness.
Yes. That's kind of Quantum Conscience is the title of the show, which basically kind of brings up the idea of that we have an all-encompassing conscience that we're dealing with these days. And, we are, instead of the conscience being able to be hidden, like it seems like in the past we were able to kind of hide our conscience and ignore it. But it just seems like every day that goes by, your conscience gets louder and louder and louder, and it keeps telling you to do things that are getting harder and harder to ignore. So what do you see happening with Ormis with regards to our consciousness and our conscience?
Improve speed up the echo time.
Mm-hmm.
Speed up the response of our thoughts and the consequences of our thoughts. Now, we've got a small double-blind study that one of the Ormis providers has done, where he hooked people up to electroencephalogram brainwave monitors. And he found that when people ingest his product, he makes trap water, CherokeeGold.net, and he takes this trap water and just feeds it to people, I think it was about 12 people over 2 days' time. The people who were hooked up to the EEG, the electroencephalogram brainwave monitor, went into a brain coherent state. In other words, left brain and right brain were coherent.
Meaning like balanced?
Balanced.
Wow. Because we typically are more left brain.
Yes. And that brain wave balance correlates with meditation.
Wow.
And they went into a brain coherent state that was at a low frequency. The Schumann resonance, which is the resonance between the Earth and the ionosphere, is somewhere around 7 to 8 hertz.
I think it's 7.8 or 7.83, something around that.
Right. And alpha brainwaves are the same.
Really?
We think that this Ormis puts us in better balance with the Earth's Schumann resonance. And that probably is beneficial for, getting along with things.
That would raise our consciousness, at least put us on a level playing field with the Earth in some way.
Yeah.
What better way to communicate with the Earth than to be on the same wavelength?
Exactly.
Huh.
And it also is related to increased intelligence. It's related to meditation. It's related to manifestation. But it doesn't control what we think about. We can still think about yucky stuff or wonderful stuff. That's still our choice. It does seem to hasten the manifestation of whatever we're thinking about. And that hasn't been measured, but the brain coherence has been measured in a small double-blind test.
Now, many people that would be friendly to the program, so to speak, are starting to realize that, life goes in cycles, humanity goes in cycles, civilization goes in cycles, consciousness goes in cycles, so small cycles, large cycles, huge eonic cycles. So what do you think the ancients were able to do with this? If they were talking about it and they're writing about it, what were they able to do? I mean, were they able to make this on a large scale?
I suspect that they were. I suspect that the pyramids, for example, were devices to concentrate or energize the Ormis. We've used pyramid shapes to energize Ormis. And in fact, one gentleman used a frame pyramid, and not a very large frame pyramid, put some gold in there and got a oil forming on the surface of the gold that we think may be the oil of gold. And so there's some anecdotal reports that these Ormis minerals are energized by shape, energized by shapes like pyramids and cymatic shapes and crystalline shapes like Masaru Emoto talks about, and respond to our thoughts. If they, in fact, do improve our connection to the non-physical, if they superconduct our thoughts and superconduct the thoughts of every cell, they may also superconduct the thoughts or the information in every drop of water. And this would then carry our intentions to the water.
Well, I mean, you do see the conical shapes in hieroglyphs. You obviously see a pyramid in the middle of the desert in Giza, which
yes.
may or may not have been a desert at the time it was built. But, it does seem to be a recurring theme, that shape. I wonder, what are they trying to tell us? You need a pyramid to make it, or that's how they were making it with pyramids? Or, what's the correlation between the shape that they're putting in the hieroglyphics and they're sticking in the desert and the idea of Ormis?
The pyramid, the Great Pyramid, may be a trap to trap Ormis out of the air and concentrate it. Or it may be a device to energize the Ormis that was put in the king's chamber.
Maybe through
frequency? The sarcophagus in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid has a white powder that accumulates in the bottom of the sarcophagus on a regular basis, and is about the same volume as the Ark of the Covenant. So these are things that we haven't really explored thoroughly, but it appears that there were efforts to concentrate these minerals. There's a place near Egypt called Serabet al-Khadim, and on the Sinai Peninsula. And in a temple there, or a workshop there, they found that the floor was covered with rocks, and under the rocks was a bunch of white powder. And they couldn't figure out what this white powder was. It didn't show up in assays or anything like that. They could not figure what the white powder was. I suspect that this place was a place where they concentrated Ormis out of stones.
Do you think that the structure was doing it, or do you think that the guardians of the structure were making it in the structure and storing it?
I don't know.
Where in the world were they making this stuff, Harry? I mean, do you think the pyramid is making it fast enough, or do you think that they did something to augment the process to speed it up?
It may have been there's one hypothesis that the pyramid was a pump to pump water up to higher levels. You can Google pyramid pump, and to pump water up to a higher level for agriculture.
Oh, yeah, I think John Cadman was the one who came up with the ram pump idea.
Yeah, and if it was a pump, it may also have been an Ormis trap. Like the tin can with a magnet on it, only the magnet on the pyramid was the earth, and its shape somehow concentrated the Ormis in the king's chamber.
Now, there's a lot of stuff revolving around this I'd love to talk about, because I personally wrote a book about how the pyramid was potentially making white powder gold through the wet process, I guess is what you would call it. But the idea that it could have been done in different methods I'm also open to that as well. But the structure, I mean, one thing that I think most people, at least listening to this program, would agree with, was not a tomb. I do not believe that.
Right.
That is definitely off the table for me. But then the question is, okay, well, if it's not, then what is it?
Most people that are really familiar with this, yeah.
Right, yeah. So then the question is, okay, well, if it was not, then what was it? And then, you listen to Chris Dunn, and he's saying that, well, maybe it was, they were making hydrogen, or making electricity through the process of making hydrogen. And you do find, evidence of hydrochloric acid in the Queen's chamber, which, if you use, from what I understand, if you use Don Manson's method, you would want to use hydrochloric acid to first dissolve the gold, and make a...
Hydrogen peroxide and hydrochloric acid is a method that I came up with.
Okay.
And it is, Don Nance described it on my website.
Okay.
But mostly I described it, and he used that to convert gold metal into a white powder.
Interesting.
But the pyramid, another Ormis researcher noticed that when he put gold metal inside of a pyramid shape, the oil formed on the surface of the metal. And we suspect that that is Ormis oil.
So it has a tendency to do it naturally.
Yes.
Without any help.
Yes. And the Ormis elements are exponentially more abundant than the metal form.
The issue is that we just don't know. We don't know where they are. What are these elements?
Exactly.
It's so strange. I mean, it's hard to wrap your head around this concept when we live in a world where we need so much evidence. And we use assays and we use mass spectrometers to try to understand what it is that we're looking at. But the thing is that every turn, the only thing we can do is find out what it's not.
Exactly. Yes.
And that's where the confusion lies. But here's the thing.
The best way to prove it is to convert metal to Ormis and convert Ormis to metal. And a gentleman in Australia has converted 25 metals into an edible white powder using the peroxide method. Some of them were very easy to convert. Some of them were very difficult to convert. It appears that the ones that are the most common as metals are difficult to convert to Ormis. And the ones that are less common as metals are easier to convert to Ormis. And vice versa. But we don't know that for sure.
So, I mean, if you even want to put an economic factor to it, it's cost factor, it's actually easier on the wallet to not have to start with the metal. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. And if you want to make metal, it probably costs more to make it than the metal's worth.
So there is the discouraging factor to everyone listening out there. Hey, I want to, turn Dead Sea salt into gold. Well, you're going to spend more trying to make it than you are selling it when you're done.
Yes, and nobody seems to have come up with any way that is cost effective.
So if you're going to do it, you're basically going to be, concentrating Ormis for health reasons or maybe for gardening and stuff like that. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and making it from metal isn't really good for gardening.
No, it doesn't sound like it unless you want to make a shovel.
Yeah. Now I've been using it on my garden. I've had incredible results on my garden, and I have a friend in town, and we've had incredible results on his garden. I've been putting it on my plum tree. My plums are usually about 3 times the size of my neighbor's plums, and mine are ready to eat, and my neighbors are a month away from ready to eat.
Oh, that's going to frustrate your neighbors when they see that.
No, they don't. They're not interested in eating the plums, and they don't care. So, and they don't fertilize it with anything, and their tree is about 50 feet away from my tree, and it's the parent tree of my tree. So, but people come from all over town to pick my plums.
I bet they do.
And I don't usually have time to pick them, so I just pick a few, and mostly other people pick them, and I say, could I have some? That's
the cost of admission.
Exactly.
So, obviously, the more people that join your forum and the more people that research this, they're going to want to take this and experiment with it. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast.
Particularly if you eat food.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
People that don't eat food, not so much.
But if you want to take it, if somebody just wants to take Ormis that they've either made themselves or buy it from somewhere else, how would you caution the listeners? Like, are there any side effects that they need to be aware of?
When you consume anything that's beneficial, it often kicks out the junk in your body, kicks out the jams, kicks out the toxins, and that's called a detox, or also called the Herxheimer effect. And detoxification, if you go about it too fast, it can be almost disabling.
Okay.
So people say, I want the strong stuff, I want the good stuff, the really strong stuff. No, you don't.
Until they get started, and then they realize
until you've been doing it for a while and you're used to it. One gentleman made some Ormis Gold using David Hudson's method and took 6 micrograms of it and was disabled for about a year.
Wow.
Because everything he thought about, he would manifest. Almost instantly. And I mean, it would manifest in an ordinary sort of way. What if I had an accident? Bam! That kind of thing.
So you're not saying that he had massive detoxification. You're saying that literal, what we would understand as manifestation occurred instantly?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he was detoxifying his thoughts.
Oh.
He learned to do mathematical equations when he wasn't involved with something else. He would keep his mind occupied by doing mathematical equations in his head. His wife almost had him put in a mental institution.
Wow.
He convinced her that they wouldn't know what to do with him. But it was that bad. But nobody would make a product like that, and there aren't any products that are that powerful or pure on the market.
Well, maybe that's why it's so good for plants, because they don't know what they're supposed to be thinking. They just be. They just are. They just do. They grow.
There you go.
They don't have to worry about the thoughts that we have to deal with.
Right.
Yeah, that's weird.
Now, it isn't, I haven't noticed anything like that, but I've been watching my thoughts for a long, long time. I started thinking about the things that I wanted rather than the things that I didn't want back in the late 60s and early 70s. So I've been focusing on what feels good, what feels better for a long, long time. I haven't noticed much of anything except, I feel better than I felt back then.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have joint pain. I don't have back problems like I used to have. My feet don't get cold anymore. They used to be cold all the time. Just, basically health benefits. I feel I've got some gray in my hair, a little bit, not a lot. My beard is pretty gray. And those things seem to be related to consuming Ormis copper, which I haven't been doing for as much lately as I did before.
Meaning your lack of gray is because of the copper?
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Well, recently I watched an interesting documentary called All the Gold You Can Eat by Joe DeCat.
Uh-huh.
And
I was in it.
And you were in it. I saw you in it. I saw your familiar face pop up, and I was like, oh, looks like I need to watch this movie.
Uh-huh.
So with your experience in that documentary and dealing with him and that, do you feel that he was able to portray Ormis in a fair manner from your perspective?
I think that he didn't start out doing it, but it ended up as being fairly accurate and fair.
Yeah, it sounded like he almost didn't really want it to be what he was researching, and then by the end of it, he was taking it himself, having very strange effects, and almost became a believer by the end of it.
There you go. Yes.
I would recommend anyone listening to this who's interested in this subject, please look that movie up and find that. All the Gold You Can Eat is the name of it, by Joe DeCat, and you'll get to meet Barry Carter on that movie. I think you'll even get to see David Hudson, and I don't know I can't remember if his face was blurred or not in that, but he did attend the conference that David Hudson was at.
In Oda.
Yeah, that was a pretty interesting thing. Now, are people able to see? Like, I noticed there were other cameras at that conference. Are they able to see anything that was filmed at that conference?
On YouTube, you can find David Hudson's unblurred face in in his entire presentation.
Okay.
Thomas Geckler at CherokeeGold.net has posted the video on YouTube. Just go on YouTube and search for Enota and Ormis, or Enota and David Hudson.
Okay. I'll put a link for that underneath the description in this video as well.
Good.
Okay. Well, we're getting close to the end here. One thing I want to ask is, what would you like to see happen with Ormis? Meaning, where do you see the collective understanding of Ormis going in the near future, and like, what would you like to see happen with knowledge of Ormis in the longer term?
I think it's going to benefit everybody in very significant ways if the word gets out. And what I want to do is get the word out in as many ways as possible to as many people as possible. Most new discoveries are ridiculed at first, but after a while, science eventually takes them up. I'd like to see more scientific research. I personally believe that this is the greatest scientific discovery in human history.
Wow.
I think it's going to change everything we know about everything, including things like communication, energy, agriculture, food, nutrition, consciousness. I mean, it has relevance in every particular field that I can imagine.
It seems to touch many things. It really does. So do you have any projects that you're working on that you'd like to share with us? Any works that you'd like to plug before we go today?
I would like people to get on Ormis forums, and you're going to put the forums link on your webpage.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes, I'll put it underneath the video.
And check out the Ormis forum on Facebook, because just do a search on the word ORMUS on Facebook, and you'll find several Ormis forums. The main one is just named Ormis by itself, the word by itself.
Okay.
And help people get the word out. Help teach people about this, because I think it's the best hope that we're going to get through these changing times. There's so many disasters that are projected or postulated by people right now. And regardless of what your favorite disaster is, Ormis can help.
You know what comes to mind, right? Fukushima.
Yeah, absolutely. And
That
it can help with that too.
That Fukushima seems to be the hot topic right now, and there are a lot of people that are very afraid of it. I'm not on the West Coast, so I'm not physically right there, but it has to be on your mind, and people in California, they're sitting there thinking, what do we do about this? It's like a slow-moving freight train coming into a tunnel that's not even open. So what is...
So far the measurements are that there's undetectable increase, no increase in radiation on seawater has been detected in the people that are monitoring it on the West Coast of the United States.
I hope you're right. But let's say, God forbid that it does begin to increase. Can we find solace in Ormis?
I suspect that it helps. I'm not absolutely certain, but I suspect that it helps. It does seem to have detoxification benefits, and there's some evidence that Ormis moves the toxic metals into their Ormis state more readily.
Okay. Now there is a fungus expert. I think his name is Paul Stemmet, and he's been working with how he's discovering that fungus has the ability to mitigate radiation in some instances, if not every instance that he's tried. Does Ormis help also spur growth with fungus the same way it does plants?
I'm a fun guy, so I know quite a bit about this, and I know Paul Stamets. And it seems to be related. It's very, very, it significantly enhances fungal growth in the soil. There was recently a report on one of the Ormis forums where they put Ormis in their compost. It was just so full of fungi, white fungal roots, I guess you'd call them, that it was mycelium.
Mycelium, yeah, I was trying to think of that too.
They're just absolutely turned everything that you shoveled up white with the mycelium.
Wow. Well, that's significant.
And I've noticed that in my garden as well.
Well, this is something. Do you talk with Paul about Ormis and how he might be able to, or is he asking you about how he might be able to incorporate Ormis in his study?
I've contacted him, but he doesn't isn't very interested.
Okay. But, his research on its own is fairly significant, and yours is too.
Is indeed.
Yeah.
And a lot of his research is based in Eastern Oregon, which is where I am.
Oh, interesting synchronicity. Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, it has been a pleasure, Barry. I'm glad that you were able to come on the show. Thank you very much for accepting my invitation to interview for the day.
It's your own damn fault.
There you go. There's so much more I want to hear. We might need to... I have some leftover questions, probably half of my questions I didn't even get to. So would you be interested in pursuing this again and getting a little bit more information out there?
I would indeed. I can also send you a list of other people that might be interested in being on your show and talking about this as well.
Thank you. I would love that. You've got my email, and I'll also post my the show email up underneath the video for anyone that's interested in discussing this, or if you think you have an expert who's going to be related to this subject, please contact me at author@pyramidfactory.net and also Spencer@realtimetruth.net. And Barry, once again, how can they contact you?
Sumro@zz.com, or go on my website, subtleenergies.com, or Garden Life, GARDEN-life.ws.
Barry, thank you so much for coming on the show. Again, everyone, please subscribe to Quantum Conscience. Look us up on YouTube and follow the show for news and important updates. On Twitter at Quantum Show for news that actually matters. Follow Tim Bravo at Tim Bravo. Thank you so much, Tim, for your work putting together the news segments. It has been phenomenal. Have a great weekend, everyone, and thanks again for watching and listening to Quantum Conscience. Check back frequently on the channel for new shows once a week or bi-weekly. See you later.